June 4th, 1942. Dawn breaks over the vast Pacific, aboard the Japanese aircraft carrier Akagi, flagship of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's striking force. The air is thick with the salt-laden mist of the ocean, the deck vibrating underfoot from the steady thrum of engines propelling the vessel through gentle swells. Officers stand in quiet vigilance, the faint scent of aviation fuel mingling with the crisp morning breeze as the horizon glows with the promise of unchallenged dominion. In this suspended moment, the admirals envision a swift conquest, their codes safeguarding the secrets of empire, unaware that the distant roar of approaching American engines, those relentless, mass-produced symbols of Yankee abundance, will soon shatter the illusion. This pivotal dawn marked the commencement of the Battle of Midway, a confrontation that would redefine the Pacific War. Following the triumph at Pearl Harbor in December 1941, where Japanese forces crippled much of the U.S. Pacific Fleet with the loss of 8 battleships damaged or sunk and over 2,400 American lives claimed, the Imperial Japanese Navy sought to extend its perimeter of defense. Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, conceived Operation MI as a decisive trap. Midway Atoll, a speck of coral 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii, was to be invaded, drawing out the remnants of the American carrier fleet for annihilation. Yamamoto's combined fleet comprised over 200 ships, including Nagumo's 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, carrying 248 aircraft, supported by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. The plan divided forces, a diversionary strike on the Aleutians to splinter U.S. attention, followed by the main assault on Midway. Japanese intelligence estimated the U.S. had at most 2 operational carriers after the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942, where Lexington was sunk and Yorktown heavily damaged. Victory seemed assured, a step towards forcing America into negotiations and securing resource-rich conquests in Southeast Asia. Yet beneath this strategic canvas lay the invisible web of cryptanalysis that rendered Japanese ambitions vulnerable. Since early 1942, U.S. Navy codebreakers at Station HYPO and Pearl Harbor under Lieutenant Commander Joe Rochefort had penetrated the JN-25B naval code, decrypting fragments that revealed Yamamoto's intentions. By late April, intercepts identified AF as Midway, confirmed ingeniously when Rochefort orchestrated a ruse, a plain text message from Midway reporting a desalination failure, prompting a Japanese transmission noting AF faced a water shortage. This intelligence, shared with Admiral Chester Nimitz, allowed the Pacific Fleet to position Task Forces 16 and 17, carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, totaling 233 aircraft, at Point Luck, northeast of Midway. Nimitz's gamble rested on this foreknowledge, committing his scant carriers against superior numbers, aware that the element of surprise had inverted. Aboard the Akagi, Nagumo and his staff anticipated a routine bombardment. Their codes, they believed, were impenetrable fortresses, woven from complex ciphers changed periodically to evade prying eyes. The admirals expected American forces scattered, reeling from prior defeats, perhaps lurking far to the south or east, oblivious to the gathering storm. Scouts launched from cruisers like Tone would spot any threats well in advance, allowing the carriers' air groups to strike with overwhelming force. The morning of June 4th unfolded as planned initially. At 0430, 108 planes lifted off toward Midway, bombing runways and installations, though anti-aircraft fire claimed several. Nagumo's men foresaw a quick mop-up, the atoll's defenses crumbling under Imperial might, paving the way for invasion troops. The roar of their own engines echoed triumph, but soon a different sound intruded, the distant multiplying drone of American aircraft engines, those relentless, mass-produced symbols of Yankee abundance, where factories churned out machines in numbers that dwarfed Japan's constrained resources. Reality crashed upon them with brutal swiftness. At 700, a Catalina flying boat sighted Nagumo's force, relaying positions that aligned precisely with U.S. predictions, within 5 miles, 5 degrees, and 5 minutes of Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton's forecast to Nimitz. American torpedo bombers from Midway attacked first, ineffective but drawing Japanese fighters low. Nagumo, meanwhile, vacillated on arming his reserve planes, torpedoes for ships or bombs for land targets. Intercepts had not warned of this. The codes, thought secure, had betrayed no hint of the ambush. Then, at 10:20, as decks swarmed with refueling aircraft, U.S. dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown plunged from the clouds. In mere minutes, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu were ablaze, their hangars erupting in infernos from ignited fuel and ordnance. Hiryu, spared momentarily, launched a counterstrike that crippled Yorktown, but by afternoon, she too succumbed to American bombs, her decks a pyre of twisted metal. The emotional chasm was profound. Japanese admirals had envisioned the skies as their domain, codes shielding movements like an invisible armor, allowing strikes with surgical precision. Nagumo, a veteran of Pearl Harbor, expected deference from fate, his fleet the apex of disciplined strategy. Instead, he witnessed chaos, carriers listing, crews abandoning ship amid billowing smoke, the acrid stench of burning oil overwhelming the salt air. Post-war accounts from survivors, including Captain Mitsuo Fuchida, air operations officer on Akagi, captured the disillusion. The whole operation had been based on the assumption that the enemy lacked the strength or will to challenge our advance. Fuchida, bedridden with appendicitis yet observing from the bridge, later reflected in his memoir, Midway, the battle that doomed Japan, on the fatal 5 minutes that sealed their fate, attributing it not to code breaches but tactical errors and underestimation. Yet whispers of doubt emerged. Yamamoto, aboard the battleship Yamato, far to the rear, received reports of the carnage and ordered a withdrawal on June 5, his grand trap unraveling. Intercepted messages post-battle revealed internal assessments blaming reconnaissance failures, not espionage, though some officers like Rear Admiral Motome Ugaki, Yamamoto's chief of staff, noted in his diary the uncanny American preparedness, hinting at deeper vulnerabilities.
Historical records underscore the scale of this reversal. Japan lost 4 carriers, 1 heavy cruiser, 248 aircraft, and approximately 3,057 men, including irreplaceable pilots honed over years of combat in China. The U.S., by contrast, sacrificed Yorktown, the destroyer Hammond, 150 planes and 307 lives. Data from U.S. Navy after-action reports detailed the precision. Dive bombers achieved hits on 80% of targets, exploiting Japanese decks crowded with vulnerable aircraft. Quotes from the era illuminate the mindset. Yamamoto had warned before the war in a letter to a colleague, "In the first 6 to 12 months of a war with the United States and Great Britain, I will run wild and win victory upon victory. But then, if the war continues after that, I have no expectation of success." At Midway, that prophecy materialized prematurely, the code's compromise accelerating the timeline. This cataclysm transformed Japanese perceptions irrevocably. What began as confidence in cryptographic invincibility eroded into paranoia. Though immediate post-battle analyses dismissed code breaches, attributing the defeat to divine intervention or American luck, as some officers phrased it, the loss pierced the ideology of invulnerability. Nagumo, relieved of command shortly after, carried the weight of failure. Yamamoto pressed on but with diminished resources, shifting from offensive grandeur to defensive attrition. The event shattered the myth of Japanese naval supremacy, forcing a reevaluation of intelligence practices. Codes were updated more frequently, but the damage lingered. By 1943, further decrypts enabled the ambush of Yamamoto's own plane, killing him en route to Bougainville. Ideologically, it exposed the fragility of authoritarian secrecy against the open ingenuity of democratic alliances, where shared knowledge among codebreakers like Rochefort's multicultural team, drawing from linguists and mathematicians, outpaced rigid hierarchies. Throughout the ordeal, that recurring sound, the thunderous approach of American engines, resonated as a harbinger. Each wave of dauntless dive bombers powered by Wright Cyclone radials mass-produced in American factories symbolized the abundance of a free society, resources mobilized not by decree but by the collective will of a people, where innovation flowed from liberty's wellspring.
On Akagi's bridge, as flames engulfed the deck, Nagumo might have heard it as the death knell of empire, those engines roaring with the output of arsenals that churned out 50,000 aircraft annually by war's end, dwarfing Japan's 5,000. This auditory emblem underscored how democracy's plenty overwhelmed autocracy's precision. In the epilogue of Midway's echoes, one discerns a poetic truth. The unraveling of codes was not mere tactical misfortune, but a reflection of freedom's enduring advantage. In the vast Pacific, where waves whisper of forgotten battles, the realization aboard those sinking hulls illuminated how openness breeds resilience, abundance flowering from ideological soil tilled by liberty. The Admiral's shattered illusions mirrored a larger verity, that empires built on concealed designs falter against nations where knowledge, like the ceaseless hum of productive engines, flows unbound, ensuring that democracy's light pierces even the deepest shadows of war.